Kia ora everyone, welcome to the first of the two webinars in our 2018 Optimise webinar series with Creative New Zealand. Thanks to those of you joining us this morning and to those of you who are listening in to our recording. I'm here right now in Creative New Zealand's Auckland offices and I'm joined by Clae Baxter, who is Digital Marketing Coordinator for Orchestra. We're really thrilled that you're joining us today. The webinar today is an hour long and focuses on how to approach the challenge of using Google Analytics data to measure performance of your website. So often I hear New Zealand talking of drowning in data. There is excitement about what Google Analytics offers and an initial energy when the reporting is first discovered, but very quickly that can. I see arts marketers delivering reports to management and boards, every list of visitor metrics pulled out in a panic before meetings. The data raises more questions than answers and is not ever turned into meaningful action. So our goal today is to give you some ways of standing back and looking at the data and how to report on it through a simplified lens, if you may. So the other day I was reading an article called Measuring Web Performance. It's really quite simple by Sydney-based web developer David Gilbertson, and this quote really resonated for me. Is like raising awareness for a cause. It's pointless unless you follow it up with something. And that's what we're aiming for when we use Google Analytics to tell how the organization's website is performing insights that enable us to make data-driven decisions. Today's webinar is going to be divided into 4 parts. So first of all, what Google Analytics can tell you about your website. So even though this isn't a Google Analytics training by any means, I do have to do a bit of a quick dive into features as a starting point. Then we'll talk about why it all starts with your website's purpose. After a break for a couple of questions, if there are any, we will move into defining the meaningful metrics to watch. And then I'll hand over to talk about website reporting at Auckland Philharmonia Orchestra. Clae is approaching the website tracking puzzle himself and is going to share some of his experiences. So what can Google Analytics tell us about our lives? So Google Analytics is a free tool as a small piece of JavaScript tracking code to collect data about your website visitors and how they interact on your website. So your Google Analytics account, you need to add the script on your site. And once it's set up, Google Analytics puts a cookie in your website visitor's browser. It will help to track interactions that users perform on your site. So it's simple, sometimes something more specific within the page, like clicking a link or a video play button. So I'm assuming that if you're joining us on this webinar, you have a Google Analytics account set up, and then once you do, you can generate that tracking code out of the account. So it really is a gold mine. But in my work with arts organisations on digital marketing and strategy, this is the type of thing I hear regularly. This is a real quote and one of few I have peppered throughout today's webinar. It's a common complaint in there, and Google Analytics changes all, refining and improving. But what tends to happen, we forget about just asking ourselves, what do we actually need to know? It's really important to realise that embedding the use of analytics to make decisions is quite a process. And sometimes the smaller, more tangible steps are the best way to move forward, particularly when you're a busy arts manager and you're trying to juggle multiple things. So it's really a great start to pick something you want to find the answer and learn that way. And turn this, even in a small way, into regular reporting to track over time. It's about getting into the habit of reporting. And utilising all the tools in Google Analytics for exporting PDF, scheduling emails and that type of thing. So analytics data can give us answers, but only if we ask the right questions. It is a bit of a chicken and egg scenario though, of course, because you kind of need to know what's in there before you know what questions are reasonable to ask. So this is why I've decided to kick off today's learning with a bit of a quick overview into 10 or so key things in Google Analytics I believe it's important to know, that I use regularly, and that if, you know, they may be new to you, but also if you know Google, be a nice reassurance. that you're looking at the right things. So a tip before we start, do not expect accurate data. Google cannot possibly track every single internet user. It's unable to track people with disabled cookies, different devices, and then also 2 or more people can use a shared device. So this is normal. What you're looking for are patterns and peaks and troughs, comparisons between things. That's what you're looking for over time. Sense whether things are on an upward trend or a downward trend, whatever. So you're never going to get completely 100% accurate data out of Google Analytics. So let's just take a bit of a dive for a moment. So when you open your Google Analytics reporting, you land on dashboard style reporting on your home page, and the left-hand menu is what gives you an overview of what's available in the free version of Google Analytics. I like to look at Google Analytics reporting on 3 levels. First is the default or standard and get the data without doing anything. And then there's the customizations you can make yourself. At the lower level, those are using things like filters and dimensions and segments on standard reports, through to the more advanced level of creating goals and reports. The customizations that may require developer intervention, like setting up event tracking and putting e-commerce tracking into place. So starting with the 3 primary groupings of standard reports, these are on the left here under real-time, acquisition and behaviour. So in quick terms, audience is who your site visitors are, acquisition is where they come from, such as search engines, inbound links and campaigns, and behaviour is what they do on your site. Real-time, right now, literally in real time, which can be useful as a dashboard or for testing. And conversions at the bottom here require customizations and enable you to track that users have completed actions that indicate a conversion, like registration, sales, and others. So next week, the same time, we have a webinar where we're talking specifically about conversions. So that's one to definitely join us on, and I'm going to park talking too much about conversions for that. And we have those joining us next week as well. And then down the bottom are your admin tools, which are really important to understand because they include things like user permissions that you should be keeping a track of, like who has access to Google Analytics, which I'm not going to go into detail about now because we don't have time, and this is something that you can go and have a look at if you don't already know. The Audience Overview Report is great because it gives you a snapshot of all the key metrics on your site. So in here are things like number of sessions per user, pages per session, and the average session duration, and bounce rate, which is the percentage. So these are really great for getting a sense overall of some benchmarks of engagement on your site. But what's more important is that, I'm just seeing a note. So I guess I'm just saying this to you, Grace, that this may be happening. I'm not quite sure what to do at the moment, but I'll keep going and let me know, Ashley, if you're getting more of that. The audience metrics in the Audience Overview Report turn up in most of the reporting in Google Analytics. And that's how we can start to see, drill into how engagement is against different dimensions, such as the traffic source, such as the page that they're on, such as where they're coming from, such as what device they're on. Another really useful report, overview report, which is where you're going to see traffic by a different device, so desktop, mobile, and tablet. And then you're going to start to see here where I've put the boxes around that this is where you start to see metrics divided into 3 areas: acquisition, behavior, and conversions. So acquisition is where is the number of users and sessions, and typically, or page views in different reports. Behavior is where you're going to see the engagement metrics. And then conversions are at the end and will only show if you have set up goals or e-commerce tracking. So just another tip before we go further, the rows, the columns are the metrics, and Google reports two types of data, and it's really important to know this. So dimensions are characteristics or attributes of website users, such as city or source medium or device category. Metric is a number used to measure these characteristics. Dimensions of words, metrics and numbers. So I talked about the conversion area of the, and this is where you can do a drop down and look at any of the goals that you have set up or to e-commerce tracking. And this is something that you need to know, and one of the most important things for you to do is to set up goals to which you can customize. So how do I explain goals? Is that when a website performer performs a specific action that you've defined as a goal. So a typical example would be that they registered for your email newsletter, or they made a purchase, or a certain number of pages, because there are 4 types of goals. Destination, which is they reached a certain URL, duration, pages and screens per session, or event goals, and I'm coming to. So if there's something that you should be starting to utilise as you track your website, and we'll come to this in a moment about how you might do that, it's goals. Goals basically tell you what percentage and number of your web visitors, any dimension that you choose, took a particular action that is important to you. So it's really important. And again, we'll be talking a bit more about goals next week too. So, and this is just showing you that admin section. So if you want to go and see if any goals are set up, you go into your admin section and you look under the view. The area that I love most of all is acquisition. And this is where you find out where your web visitors are coming from, and then you can use all these metrics, including those engagement metrics under behaviour, to see which are performing best and which are performing as well. So the overall channel report gives you channel groupings that are predefined by Google Analytics, and you can customize them too, but at the moment the predefined ones are fine. And then you can go into more detail in the source, medium, or referral reports. Yeah.
Okay. We've just had a little switch over with sound here, so hopefully this is clear for everyone. Great. So campaigns is something we'll talk about next week too. This is really important because anything that is inbound into your site should really be, any link that is inbound should be tracked with Google parameters. They're called UTM parameters. So in all campaigns, you're going to see not only things that have been auto-tagged through your email or through your Google AdWords, but any links, campaigns that you've set up yourself for social media posts and things like that. Campaigns are important because they enable you to drill down into individual content and individual posts, individual stories and emails and those sorts of things. I know I'm ripping through this, but I just want you to know what you should know. Site content is the area where you can see the behaviour on your site and the most popular content. And that's, of course, important. And the last thing I wanted to flag today is event tracking. So events in Google Analytics have nothing to do with the sort of events that we're used to dealing with in the arts. Google Analytics works by tracking page or screen loads. That's that code on the page that I talked about. So when a user does anything in the page that doesn't load a new page, this is not tracked until we set up event tracking. So typical events are video plays, link clicks, the percentage of the page that's scrolled down, downloads, and login type actions. And this needs to be set up, but if you really want to understand visitor behaviour, you need to learn how to do this or work with your developer to do this so that you can start tracking these important in-page actions. So I know that was a whistle-stop tour. I've summarised it here, so later on you can have a look at it, but the 10 key things to know are these things here: the default reports, what's a dimension versus a metric. The audience overview report contains key engagement metrics. The mobile reports are a wealth of information about how your site performs on different devices. You can view acquisition, behaviour and conversion metrics in most reports. Goals should be set up for your site, and they can be set up in the admin area, and there are 4 types of goals that you can set up. The channels report and other traffic reports offer an overview of the incoming traffic by category or by referral site or by campaign. And campaigns show all your inbound traffic tracked with UTM code. Site content reports show you what site visitors are viewing, and events track user interactions with content measured independently of web page or screen load. So it's easy to go into Google Analytics and see reports like these, very sexy looking reports, very visual, behaviour flow type things, and you really start thinking, I should understand all these, I should be using these. These may or may not be a way to get an answer to a question regarding your site. Until then, just focus on the questions that you have and the reporting that gives you the answers you need. Keep it simple, because it is very easy to fall into rabbit holes with Google Analytics. So this is why it's important and why I showed you some of the broad possibilities. But keep thinking, what is the answer I need to my question and what are my questions? So let's get out of the Google Analytics weeds already and get back to our higher purpose. And I want to talk about why effective website measurement starts with your website's purpose, and that this is the process I follow to get to the metrics that matter. So this is another poor arts marketer telling me once I get in there I never come out. We have limited time as arts marketers, and we need to limit our questions and be very focused in what we're asking. So before we start measuring our website success, we need to understand what job or jobs we are expecting our website to do for us. To get started, it can be helpful to think of these in 3 broad categories: awareness, engagement, and conversion. I'm not saying there are not nuances or specific situations that don't fit into this, but take it from one who's spent many times down the analytics and web KPI rabbit holes. The more that you can create a simple framework, the easier it will be to get started. And awareness, engagement, and conversion is one such framework. So let's look at what we might mean by these from the point of view of an arts patron. So let's imagine the arts patron is me. So I may land on the Auckland Theatre Company's website via a link in a newsletter about the ASB season of the audience. This is an action that I see fitting into the awareness bucket. So if someone has landed on an event page, this really is tracking that they've become aware of the event or whatever other page they've landed on your site. If I stay on the page but I delve down into the program tab on this page and start interacting with the virtual program book, I'm in engagement mode, as I am if I scroll deeply down the page into new reading or click on a few informational links that take me further into the process. And then if I head into the shopping cart, I am on my way to a conversion. Now, this is going to depend on e-commerce tracking on your site and third-party sites, and there's going to be some insights on that next week. But conversions can be whatever you define them as. So the ultimate conversion may be a purchase or a registration or a membership or a donation, but we may also set up micro-conversions, which are steps along the path. So an example of another sort of conversion might be an email sign-up, because that's the first step to getting them engaged and connecting with you in a way that you can continue to converse with them. So this can be a really helpful way to group metrics. So let's start with a website and think about its purpose. So the World Symposium of Choral Music is coming up in 2020 in Auckland, New Zealand, and it's an incredible event. If you didn't know New Zealand was hosting it next year, now's a chance to find out. So for 1 week in 2020, Auckland will be home to leading choirs, conductors, composers and administrators from all over the world during July 2020. So let's think about what the World Symposium of Choral Music's website needs to do for them. And I'm just looking at this completely from the outside. So I can see 4 things at first glance. First, it needs to encourage people to become aware of WSCM 2020 and also to find out, become educated about it. The second thing it needs to do, and I've circled programs and events here, is it needs to engage visitors with information about the program and the events to help them make the decision to commit. And ultimately, on the far right, top right, is conversion to registration. So they need to ultimately convert people to registering for the event. And I can see another top level purpose here, and that's to get people to sign up to a permission email list to continue to find out information for an ongoing conversation that might lead to further loyalty and ultimately again a registration. So these are the sorts of things you need to be thinking about. What is your website's purpose? What jobs does it need to do for you? And another important thing to do is to talk to your internal stakeholders. So depending on the size of your organisation, you're going to have people responsible for different areas such as development and education, artistic, all sorts of things. And it's really important that they all feed into the process of determining what your website's purpose is, and that this all goes back to your organisational goals, because this is really what your website's there to do. It's to help achieve those goals. And it's really easy to forget about all this when you're delving around and swimming around in Google Analytics. So I'm asking you to step right back and ask yourself, what is the purpose or the multiple purposes of my website? So let's go back to our WSCM 2020 website and the purposes that we identified and think about how they might fit into this framework of awareness, engagement and conversion. So under awareness, these are the metrics that might tell us. So what we're asking is, what might tell us that this thing had been achieved? So under awareness, I put down that they've viewed a page, people have viewed a page in the About WSCM 2020 section of the site. And they went deeper into the site after landing in the section. Engagement might be that they read about a choir and program and events, and they watched a video about a choir. So there's 24 choirs coming from around the world, and each of them has a page and information and videos. And that would indicate to me that they're becoming pretty interested. Conversion would be potentially that they signed up for the monthly email and they registered for the symposium. Now, this is not all the metrics, but this is just some. And this is how you go about the process of identifying the most important metrics for you. I'm just going to pause for a moment just to see if there's any questions right now. And I'm sorry that there are a few sound issues and it sounds like it's working better now. Thank you for bearing with me. Great. Thank you, Ashley, saying it's working great. So are there any questions at this point? And if not, I'll carry on. We've got another chance for questions towards the end. Great. I think I'll continue on because I'm not seeing any lots of people with their hands up yet. And I'm going to continue on with our example to move further into how you define meaningful metrics to watch. And this is another thing I hear so often, I just don't know what to report on. I find that arts organisations, arts managers and marketers really struggle with how to report on their website's performance. So this process is hopefully going to help you. So just coming back to our framework, awareness, engagement and conversion, and how we've identified a few answers to these questions. How can we prove that we have awareness? How can we prove that we have engagement? And how can we track that we have conversion? So, as I mentioned, awareness might be that they visited this section about WFCM 2020. Any of the pages in this section is indicating that they've become aware. And then engagement, as I mentioned, is that they may read about a choir and they may specifically watch a video about a choir. And my conversion metrics that I identified were that they may have registered or they may have signed up for the e-newsletter. And I want to make a little comment here. In the sign-up process on this site, you'll notice at the top that the URL changes to a /newsletter sign up link. And so what this is, because this is a different URL, this can be used to set up a destination goal. So a destination goal in Google Analytics shows that the people who reach that goal reach that destination page. And because you can only reach the destination page by signing up to the e-newsletter, well, anyone who opens that page has to have completed that goal. And so once you've set up a goal, say for e-newsletter registration, you can then use that goal in any of the reports to see how many people converted to that goal within the time period that you set. And also you can segment it by things like traffic source and by geography and whether they're on desktop or mobile or tablet, those sorts of things. So all those dimensions can be segments, and then you can use that goal to measure performance. So what we've done here, we've started with a framework, awareness, engagement, conversion, a simple framework. Then we've thought about our site's purpose, and then what would some of the things that the site has to do, how would they fit into this framework? And what would be some of the things that would tell us the answers? And then this is how you go into Google Analytics, because now you've defined what you need to know, and now you can go in and start thinking about, of all that reporting in Google Analytics, which ones are going to tell me these answers. And you can start your simple, build a simple report based on this. And it's a whole different way of going into analytics, really thinking about what you need to know first. Now, you may not have all the answers. You may have identified that event tracking on video plays is going to give you the answer, but you haven't set it up yet. I think that's the least of your worries. Once you know what you need to look at and what data you need to use and what reporting you need to use, getting it set up is just a matter of learning or getting someone to help you type of thing. So this is why the important thing is defining what you need to know. So someone who has been through this process of defining what they need to know and trying to figure out what reporting in Google Analytics is going to help them is Clae Baxter, who is Digital Marketing Coordinator at Auckland Philharmonia Orchestra. So I'm going to hand over to Clae right now. I've had the pleasure of working with Clae over the last year on our digital capability and digital strategy programs. So I'm really pleased to give him the opportunity to share what they've been discovering. Over to you, Clae.
Awesome. Thank you, Vicki. Yes, as she mentioned, my name's Clae Baxter. I'm the Digital Marketing Coordinator at the Auckland Philharmonia Orchestra. So just for a bit of context, the APO is a full-time professional orchestra. We put on over 70 events per year that include traditional classical music concerts to family concerts, more contemporary concerts, and a range of events and programs that focus on bringing the orchestra to audiences and communities that might not otherwise have the opportunity to experience live classical music. So as the digital marketing coordinator, a major aspect of my job is managing the website. This includes managing the content of the website, keeping it up to date, as well as managing any future development to the design and structure of the website. Due to the multifaceted nature of our organization, we need to ensure that it fills the needs of all of our departments and internal stakeholders, whether that be selling tickets or providing to educational resources to schools that we work with. So in 2018, we participated in the Digital Capability Initiative with the Audience Connection, and as part of that, we went through a process of reviewing our website and identifying just updates and changes that we felt we needed to make to ensure that our website supported our organizational goals. And yeah, basically we sort of tried to figure out what these goals were, where we might not be achieving those goals, and then prioritizing and creating a work plan. So some of the updates that we identified as part of the plan were perhaps improving our purchase pathways to increase the amount of ticket purchases on our website, creating more engaging video and editorial content, and changes to the layout of certain sections to ensure that they're communicating information like clearly and effectively, making our donation pathways a little bit less confusing to ensure that making a donation was as easy as possible. And basically, given these goals, we wanted to identify and then set up ways to track the impact of any changes that we were making. We weren't exactly sure how we would go about measuring everything we wanted to at this point. We just wanted to identify a few specific goals and figure out how we can use Google Analytics to help us determine if we're achieving them. Just as an aside, collecting this data is also really, really helpful when it comes to proposing changes to particular sections of the website. I found through this process that there were often historical reasons why a certain section of the website was laid out the way it was, and having a data-driven approach and developing a case for a particular change that you want to make is really, really useful. I think people are sort of married to their parts of the website, and if you can be like, no, well, the data would indicate that a particular change would work, it can really help to change minds. So some of the questions that we wanted to answer to determine if we were achieving our goals were what you see here. Are users more engaged with our website? Are they visiting the areas of the website that we want them to visit? Are they actually donating to us? And are users making more online bookings? And so with these questions, it becomes a matter of looking what's in Google Analytics that can give us these answers. And if not all of them right now, just at least some of them. Because we knew that Google Analytics features like these standard reports that we can utilize. These are things like, the demographics information and the bounce rates and site duration times, and that we can also set up goals. And eventually, with a little bit of work behind the scenes, we can set up things like e-commerce tracking that can provide additional insights into how our website's performing as well. But we wanted to start off simple, not really get bogged down in the details, and focus on getting into the habit of just collecting, interpreting, viewing, and reporting on these metrics in order to inform our priorities. It's important to take it, I think, in bite-sized chunks because you can really get overwhelmed by all the options. But even just the most simple data, if you're answering specific questions, can be really informative. I'm going to give an example of how we ended up using Google Analytics to help answer whether we are achieving one of those goals that I laid out before. One of the things that we've been trying to do is create a wider range of engaging editorial and video content to try and encourage people to visit our website for longer periods of time. So not simply have our website as like a hub for selling tickets, but as a place to come actually enjoy the content that we can create surrounding the work that we do. So the question then becomes, sorry, I think I jumped ahead. Are people more engaged with our website? And answers that would indicate that people are doing so would be that the average site duration visit is increasing, that the bounce rate is decreasing, that these improvements are consistent across desktop and mobile, and that there's evidence of video views, clicks, and downloads on the content that we're wanting people to consume, and that we understand the sources of our most engaged visitors. And so we were able to use Google Analytics in the following ways to determine whether our progress towards achieving this goal whether we were making progress towards achieving this goal of having our users more engaged. So this is just a screenshot from our Google Analytics account, and so we're often using the standard reports to monitor the overall bounce rate of the website and specific sections of the website within that. And whenever we create a new piece of content, whether that be a video that we've uploaded or an article, we monitor the views to determine if people have been visiting it and to see where those views are coming from, if it's shared on Facebook or if somebody else has shared it. We can determine where those sources are coming from. And we also created a goal that gives us a conversion if a user spent more than 2 minutes on our website. We sort of chose this marker as it's like a little bit above the average site duration. So yeah, a longer time spent on the website would indicate that they're yeah, more engaged with the content. And through these, we're able to determine that our recent focus on creating more of this style of content has had success in terms of reducing bounce rate, increasing the time on the website, but perhaps not as much as we would like, which would indicate that maybe it's not so much the content that we're producing that's the problem, but perhaps the content needs to be promoted more effectively on our landing page. And I think like those sorts of insights are just important because it allows you to really experiment with how to change these behaviors of the people on the website. And yeah, just be able to sort of see the effect that the changes that you are making have on the numbers that you want to be affecting. One thing that we still want to achieve is setting up event tracking to monitor things like ticket purchases and downloads. We're currently in talks with our web developers, Ogilvy, to set this up. But even without that, it goes to show that if you go into Google Analytics with really explicit goals and questions, you can gain a lot of useful information, even with only like a really rudimentary understanding of the tools that Google Analytics provides. So now that we had decided on like what we needed to track, it was time to think about how we would approach like reporting this information. Like who needs data on the website, at what level of detail, how often, and like in what format. We kind of identified that there were 3 levels of information that would be useful for circulating around our team. So there's top level highlights, which are really important for our board and senior management to give them a sort of very generic overview of how things are going without sort of getting bogged down in details that they don't have the time to understand, essentially. And then more detailed website performance statistics for especially my marketing manager. And then the deeper level reporting, which goes into informing ongoing website work. So this is stuff that our developers would have access to and stuff that's relevant to me specifically. As part of the Digital Capability Initiative, we decided to explore the then at the time brand new Google Data Studio tool. This is a really useful platform for displaying various statistics that you can pull from Google Analytics in a really visually appealing way that isn't limited by the framework that Google Analytics sets up for you. You can customize it to display exactly what you want, and then it also like constantly updates, so it works as like an ongoing performance report for the website that you can just provide the relevant people with a link to so they can just jump in and check it out. So the front page of our report has been really useful for communicating general performance statistics for our website to those that might not have expertise in the area. It includes things like website visitors, our mobile desktop, there's a tablet breakdown, demographics information such as where people are coming to our website from in terms of both location and also how they found the website itself. There's also a breakdown for our visitors within New Zealand, where they are coming from. And for certain statistics, you can see here, we also have the Data Studio report set up so that it always is comparing this particular quarter to the same quarter in the last year. We operate on an annual basis, so having that sort of direct comparison between this year and last year is really useful. And I mean, this is just grabbed from the other day, and as you can see, we've got more sessions and a lower bounce rate, which would indicate that we're doing some positive work. And then sort of deeper into the report, this is something that I'd provide for our board and like board reports, and it's really useful for that sort of thing. But deeper into the report, we sort of have like breakdowns of different sections of the website, the areas of the website where people most often end up, and then also like breakdowns within specific sections of the website where they're visiting and all that sort of stuff. So this is something that's more relevant for our marketing team specifically, something that I'd share with our marketing manager. And then for more specific and detailed information, we tend to give access to our Google Analytics account directly to our website developers. Obviously, they have more expertise than I do in this area, so they're much more comfortable sort of diving down directly into the raw data. In terms of how we want to continue using these tools in the future, I really, really want to get conversion tracking set up so that we can monitor, especially how a season launch goes in terms of driving like online subscriptions. That's one of our big goals internally, is to increase the amount of online subscriptions that we're selling through our website. We also have a few more website updates that are going to be rolled out throughout the second half of 2018. And yeah, Google Analytics tools are obviously invaluable in determining whether those changes are going to be successful. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it that I've got to talk about. I'll hand back over to Vicki, but yeah, thanks for listening.
Thanks, Clay. That's just been so useful. I have a couple of things to sort of draw out from what you've been saying, but does anyone have any questions while you have Clay in the room about how he's approached this, or any more detail about anything he's talked about? And if you don't have questions right now, we can answer them after the webinar, no problem. Sometimes you need to think about your questions a little bit. I'll just keep chatting and give you a chance to sort of think through any questions now. Congratulations on your more sessions and lower bounce rate. That's great to see. So we have a question about where is the Google data tool available from? Data Studio, I presume you're talking about. That is freely available? Yeah.
Like, just search up Google Data Studio, and then you'll have to jump through a hoop where you connect the Google Analytics account to Data Studio. But then basically, if we go, I might just jump back a few slides. If we jump to something like this, basically you're provided with a page where you can sort of create all these little widgets, and then, I'm not skilled up enough to give you a proper tutorial on how to set all this up at the moment. But yeah, basically these are pulled directly from Google Analytics, and you just sort of drag and drop and lay it out. I spend a bit of time making sure mine's pretty for board reports and stuff like that. They can look a lot more rudimentary to start out with, but there's also a lot of like really robust tutorials and stuff like that on YouTube, and yeah, the community around using these tools is pretty large. So yeah, practice your Google foo, I reckon.
These reports in Google Data Studio can be multi-page reports, and I think one of the things that Google's doing is sort of starting to phase out their dashboard reports. They're not prioritizing those as much within Google Analytics. You used to be able to, well, you still can, set up small dashboards that are kind of single-page dashboards, and there were limitations around those, and this is a lot more flexible. The other thing with Google Data Studio, which we're starting to experiment with, is that you can pull in data from other platforms. So that means social media and email platforms and things. So it's not just limited to Google Analytics. Don't ask me detailed questions about that yet, but that definitely is a possibility. Yeah, so I guess I just wanted to say that dashboard reporting thing is actually really useful, even for those of us who are working at a deeper level with our website, because I think it's important to be constantly looking at your metrics and getting that familiarity where someone could just ask you, what's your average monthly visitor sessions, and you could just tell And I think that looking at things on a regular basis at a dashboard level is a really good way to sort of get those little alerts, oh, something's sort of dropping this week, that type of thing. So, you know, even though dashboard reporting is quite simple, it still has really great uses. And I love that Clae has pulled out what, you know, there's only so much that someone who's not buried in the website all the time can take on board. And I think just keeping those metrics really simple and relevant and related to your goals and being able to track back to performance is really important. The other thing I wanted to flag that Clae raised is that comparing data to the past, and that's something that you can just do in Google Analytics standard reports as well as in Data Studio. And if you're working seasonally, like you're a festival every 2 years or whatever, it's really important to, when you're comparing to past, to compare to a similar time period with similar activity. Otherwise, for example, if you're comparing your second quarter results to the first quarter, and the first quarter includes January where most people are on holiday, it's not really an accurate, you're not comparing apples with apples. So that was just an important point that I'm glad you raised, Clae. Yeah. So I don't see any other questions at this point, but I will say feel free to ask Clae or me or Creative New Zealand, and we can get answers to you after the webinar. I'm just going to jump forward to just another way to help you as you're building a report on your website. I find this framework works well too. So first you're asking yourself who needs data and why do they need it. So where are they coming from when they're looking at that data? What's their reason for wanting to know about data? So it might be an internal stakeholder who is a content owner, say they're the head of education, and so they're going to be particularly interested in their area of the site, or they may be at board or senior management level and they are wanting to see overall performance metrics. What do they most need to know related to this? And this is where what Clae's talking about, just being simple with what they need to know and just starting with what is essential, or even at a rudimentary level you can get a lot of information. Just start with what they need to know and don't give people what they don't need to know. When do they need it? So do they need it, are they a funding agency that needs it on an annual level? Are they the board and they need it for the monthly reports? Is it you and you need it almost daily or weekly? Or is it your manager and they need a weekly update? And then how will you get it to them? So it may be that it's part of an overall board report. It may be that you are setting up in Google Analytics automated emails and sending them just PDF versions, or it may be in Google Data Studio, like Clae has done, and you're sending them out a link and it dynamically updates. And once you've answered those 5 questions, you're starting to see the different types of reporting that you need to produce. And as you'll see, as Clae mentioned, he had identified 3 levels of reporting, and that is just really helpful. And then if you map it back to we're pulling out metrics that relate to the questions we're asking, related to our website's purpose, then you're not swimming around in Google Analytics like you may have been previously. So just to wrap up, to recap, we talked about what Google Analytics can tell you about your website. I gave you a bit of a whistle-stop tour. Why it all starts with the website's purpose, how you use that to define meaningful metrics, and we heard from Clae about website reporting at Auckland Philharmonia. Now, Clae mentioned communities out there around these tools and resources. There is no end of analytics training and resources. So I encourage you, once you've identified what reporting you believe is going to be important for you, to start upskilling a little bit in these areas. And this is, if you just Google analytics training and support, this will come up, and this is all Google's resources. They also have a demo account now that you can sign up for, which helps you to test things that aren't already on your site. So it used to be really difficult to learn about things like e-commerce tracking when you didn't have e-commerce tracking set up because you couldn't trial it. So the demo account is brilliant because you can try all these things. And that's where all that dummy data came from in the screenshot that I was showing you. And just to remind you that the next webinar is going to sort of build on this and go a bit deeper into things like goals and campaigns and event tracking, which I mentioned. And we have, as I mentioned, Zoe White from Brisbane Festival. So this is from website interactions to audience outcomes, and it's next Tuesday at the same time. So I hope to see you all there. And thank you so much for joining us. You know where to contact us, and happy to try and answer any analytics puzzles at any time. Appreciate your time, and have a great day, everyone.